Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm going to be giving you some recommendations for 2022 releases that I have read so far this year so that it can hopefully help you plan your TBR for the new Releaseathon, which is a readathon that I am co-hosting with a bunch of other great people. I'll link all of the information about that down below. So today I will just go through all the books that I've read so far this year that are 2022 releases, tell you what they're about, what I thought, and then also tell you what prompts I think that they fulfill for the bingo board challenges. First, I'll talk about some SFF releases that I've read, starting with Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is such a sweet, cozy, gentle, slice of life type of book. It's set in a fantasy world, and we follow an orc who is tired of her days of being a warrior and decides to set up a coffee shop. And we just follow her in that process as she gets the materials and sets up the shop and tries to figure out how to advertise. And she builds sort of a found family of other people around her as she tries to do this. It is just like so sweet. It really, really worked for me. It's definitely gentle and slow, so you have to like that, but I really loved it. So for the bingo board prompts, this is a debut and it is going to satisfy the hard mode because this is, I believe, self-published. And since it's self-published, I think that also counts as indie published. So if you've never heard of this book, then that should also satisfy the hard mode of never heard of the book for indie published. This book also has some LGBTQ rep because there is a gentle female-female romance in this, and the title is without any articles. Next is All the Horses of Iceland by Sarah Tolmie. This is a historical fantasy set in, I believe, the 9th century, following a trader from Iceland who goes all the way to Mongolia along the Silk Road and ends up getting some horses to bring back to Iceland, but there's also a lot of ghosts and magic and things like that along the way. This has that kind of classic epic mythology feel to it, even though it's a modern story, and it was like really enjoyable. Maybe not too much depth beyond that, but it was a really beautiful story if you like history and you like that kind of classic myth feeling. This is a novella, although it does not satisfy the hard mode challenge of not Tordotcom because it is Tordotcom. Then we've got Kundo Wakes Up by Saad Z. Hossein. This is a really strange book that I think I was kind of on the fence about, but I think it can work for a lot of people. So this is set in sort of a future eco-dystopia with cyberpunk elements, as well as fantasy mythological elements, and it's set in Bangladesh, where the author is from, in the future. And basically we follow a character, Kundo, who basically his wife has gone missing and he's been in a bit of a depressive funk. And he comes out of that, realizes that his wife has gone missing. He thinks that maybe something kind of like foul play has happened, and he tries to investigate what exactly is going on. And through this, he sort of built a little bit of a found family and has to come to terms with a lot of his own issues. So I think that the world building in this is so fantastic, but it does have that cyberpunk feel, like really male-centric in a lot of ways. And I'm just not like a huge fan of that style, but I think that if you like cyberpunk, I think that this is totally cool, especially because it's set in Bangladesh. It's just such a different take on a classic genre. So for the challenges, this satisfies novella, although again, it is Tordotcom. This also is a title without articles. The author is a BIPOC author who is also not from the US. He is from Bangladesh, which is in the global south, so that satisfies the hard mode for that challenge. Also, this is a genre bender. Depending on how you want to classify this, as science fantasy, that can be 2 genres, or if you want to classify this as ecological dystopia, cyberpunk, and fantasy, then you could count it as more than 2 genres. Next is a short story that is available to read for free online, so I will link that below. A record of our meeting with the grand fairy lord of vast space and its great possibilities, revised by A.T. Greenblatt. So this is a fantastic short story that is about a crew of a spaceship that get kind of stuck in this tidal pool of time and they just cannot get out. And so they ask for help for this fairy lord who has the ability to manipulate time, but it's quite difficult to ask for his help. And there's a lot of movement within time within the story. And it's really fantastically done structurally. And then also I just loved the writing and the themes. So I really highly recommend this story. Also for the bingo challenges, this satisfies the disabled / neurodivergent author. A.T. Greenblatt has cerebral palsy. She also has some great essays on disability rep in SFF, by the way. And it also is hard mode because this is intersectional since she is also a woman. That counts. And this is a short story. Now moving on to some middle grade recommendations, starting with the middle grade fantasy, Witchlings by Claribel A. Ortega. So this is a secondary world fantasy that takes place in this town where everybody is witches, and the main character, Seven, is just turning 12, and when you turn 12 in this world, you get sorted into a coven, except she doesn't get sorted into a coven. She gets put in this group of spares, which is very much looked down upon in her society. And she has to make friends with these other girls in the spares, even though they kind of don't get along, as well as solve some impossible task in order to keep their magic. So there's great world building in this, a lot of adventure, it's pretty fast paced, a little silly at times. So yeah, it's very much a classic fantasy middle grade. This satisfies the challenges of a title without articles, as well as the hard mode, which is a title that is just one word, Witchlings, and BIPOC author. Next is a middle grade contemporary, Maisie Chen's Last Chance by Lisa Yee. So this is the story of Maisie, who is a middle school kid, and her mom, who go to stay with her grandparents, who they're a little bit estranged from because her grandfather is in failing health. He's got a terminal illness, and her mom's going to kind of help out with that, help out with their Chinese restaurant that they run. And during this summer, Maisie sort of has to learn a lot about her own family history. She builds this connection with her grandfather, who tells her all of these stories of their ancestors who came over from China to America, worked on railroads, lots of really great aspects talking about Chinese American history. And then also there's sort of that contemporary storyline of Maisie being in this very white, very small town, and some of the kind of anti-Asian sentiment that pops up there as well. So this deals with a lot of excellent history, excellent contemporary issues. It's got a lot of heart. There's all this connection with the grandparents and the history. I absolutely loved this one. I really strongly recommend it. And this satisfies the prompt of a title without articles, as well as a BIPOC author. Another great middle grade contemporary is Golden Girl by Reem Faruqi. This is actually a novel in verse, which I love. I really love novels in verse, but it's very approachable. And it is about a girl who is dealing with a couple of issues, including kleptomania. She keeps taking things from her friends, from her teachers, that sort of thing. She just can't seem to stop herself. And she's also kind of dealing with a lot of issues at home. Her grandfather has cancer and has come from Pakistan to stay with them. And he's going through chemotherapy and all these sorts of things. And her dad, who works for some airlines, has been detained in Dubai under suspicion of embezzlement, even though he actually went there to handle some other guy who was embezzling. And so there's that family separation. So she's dealing with quite a lot in her life, and it's about her trying to figure out what to do, her trying to help out but not always making the right decisions. And it's just so beautifully written. It's really heartfelt. It has a lot of great commentary on so many different things. This satisfies the bingo board prompts of title without an article, BIPOC author, and then also, depending on kind of your definition of disabled and neurodivergent, I think that this counts. The author has some hearing loss in one ear, which also the main character has, as well as the author has gone through cancer and chemotherapy, which the grandfather is going through. So for me, this counts as fulfilling that category, but it's up to you guys. And if you count that, obviously it is also intersectional because the author is a woman and also BIPOC. Next is Ain't Burned All the Bright by Jason Reynolds, illustrated by Jason Griffin. So this is really fascinating. This is part like art exhibition, part poetry. Jason Reynolds is an amazing poet who does a lot of middle grade work, and this is basically about a boy dealing with 2020. And so it's about his emotions and his feeling of being like almost suffocated by the heaviness of everything, by COVID, by all of the kind of police brutality, by just everything going on. And so it's exploring those emotions. And Jason Griffin, the illustrator, this is very abstract illustrations, very emotional illustrations. They're just like paintings. So it's like going through an art exhibition. And this is done almost like a long, continuous poem. It is stunning. I absolutely loved this. So if you're interested in this kind of slightly more experimental work, I think it's fantastic. I really loved this one, and it satisfies the prompt of BIPOC author. Now moving on to some romances, starting with The Missing Page by Cat Sebastian. This is the second book in the Page and Summers series, and I do think that you should read the first book before coming on to the second one. So if you're interested, I do have a series review, so I'll link that down below. But this is a male-male cozy romance mystery historical series, and in it we follow Paige, who is sort of like an ex-spy, and Summers, who is a country doctor. And in the second book, Summers is going to an estranged uncle's house for the reading of his uncle's will, but there happen to be quite a lot of family mysteries that need uncovering, and his lover Paige comes to kind of help out. So it is just the gentlest, sweetest thing. I love the setting. I loved how cozy it felt. I loved the mystery, and I loved the romance, especially as Paige and Summers sort of deepen their relationship and figure out how to work through some of their issues. The prompts that this satisfies are genre bender, because it is a cozy mystery plus a historical romance. This is a sequel. It does have LGBTQ plus rep because it's a male-male romance. And then if you haven't heard of this book before, then you could also use it for that prompt along with the hard mode because it is indie published. Then there's The Siren of Sussex by Mimi Matthews. This is a Victorian historical romance, and in it the heroine is coming to London in order to find a husband so that she can be financially stable and provide for her sisters as well as for her horse. She is an excellent horseman and has a very expensive, very wonderfully thoroughbred horse, and she decides that she's going to make a splash and attract people's attention through riding her horse in absolutely gorgeous, stunning riding habits, so really beautiful dresses for riding. And so she goes to a tailor to get these made, and they kind of fall in love. And the tailor is a little bit interesting because he is of Indian descent. So his mom was Indian and his father was white British. So he occupies a very interesting position in British society, sort of a in-between type of feeling. And this was definitely something that was happening at the time in Victorian England. And so I loved all of the history of that is brought in, the social issues, and watching them fall in love was pretty good. There is a little bit of ridiculousness to this story. I think that the plotting wasn't always perfect, but I did think that there was a lot of really cool stuff in this, and especially the sort of social commentary I loved. So yeah, this is an interesting book for that. It satisfies the prompts of BIPOC author. Then there's a contemporary romance, Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. So this takes place during a cooking competition, which if you're a fan of watching reality TV cooking competitions, you'll love all of that stuff. And here there's quite a bit of drama related to it. And we follow two of the contestants, one of whom is a woman who is kind of dealing with figuring out what she wants in her life. She's gone through a divorce and she's just not really sure what she's doing. She's a little bit of a mess in general. And the other is a non-binary person who is also dealing with kind of some of the issues of being non-binary and out on kind of national TV, and they really hit it off. And so this is so much about their cooking as well as their relationship. They're coming together. They sort of form this attraction and this connection. There is quite a bit of drama in this, which isn't so much my thing, but I did think that it was just really well done, and I thought that the non-binary rep was really, really cool in this romance. So this satisfies the challenges of course, LGBTQ plus rep, including the hard mode of the less represented representations, so non-binary here. It is a debut for the author, and also it is a title without articles. And then lastly, I have a nonfiction recommendation, Black Love Matters, edited by Jessica Pride. So this is an anthology of essays that are all talking about Black romance. And so you have a bunch of different people within the genre, so everything from readers to writers to academics, talking about Black romance, and Black romance being defined where all of the leads are Black. And this is just such a great essay collection. I really liked the way that it explored a lot of the kind of inner details of some of the discussions within Black romance. Things like, what's the difference between having all of your leads be Black versus having interracial? And what about queer rep within Black romance? And what about the way that things are marketed or supported by publishers? So many different great discussions. So if you read romance at all, I really, really recommend this book. I thought it was so fascinating. It satisfies the prompts of title without articles, as well as BIPOC author. Okay, so those are all of the 2022 releases that I've read so far this year. I hope that some of those sound interesting and maybe might get added to your TBR. I know that the other hosts of the new Releaseathon are also going to be putting out their recommendations, so check those out. I have all of their channels linked below. And over the next few weeks before the readathon starts, I do have some other 2022 releases that I'm planning to get to. So anything that I read and I wrap up in my weekly reads, I'll make a note if it is a 2022 release so that you've got that on your radar as well. If you guys have read any of these, or if you think that you might want to try to pick these up, go ahead and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you.